International human rights watchdog Amnesty International has called on Nigeria's government to show more commitment to locating victims of enforced disappearance in the country. Amnesty, while marking the International Day of Victims of Enforced Disappearance, urged government to open a national register for the victims, investigate reported cases, and help reunite them back to their families. News Centre's Amadine Uyi reports.
August the 1st, 2019. Armed men suspected to be security operatives abducted Abubakar Idris, popularly known as Abu Hanifa Dandiata, from his residence in Nigeria's northwestern state of Kaduna. Dandiata was a known government critic, and 4 years after his disappearance, no one has been able to locate his whereabouts. With cases like this abounding in the country, especially in the northeast region, which has been the epicenter of the Boko Haram insurgency, thousands have disappeared with no trace of their whereabouts.
In Borno State alone, in the northeast, we have partner organizations that have recorded 23,000 missing people, and some of them as far back as 9 years. So it's really a very big problem.
As international human rights watchdog Amnesty International marked the International Day of Forced Disappearance in Nigeria, they say government must rescue missing persons in order to return peace to the troubled region.
The figures are much higher than whatever you may imagine, because many families, as you can see here, we have brought families of victims, and 1 or 2 cases that we presented are only an example of the volume and the number of cases that we have. There is no way we can have peace without making sure that all those people that have been missing are found and reunited with their families.
Some other citizens still in search of their loved ones who attended the event took time to express their demands.
I'm here to talk on the disappearance of my parents, Ife the Calista and Ife the Sunday, that were abducted by the DSS on 23rd November of 2021. Invaded our house early morning of that day, around 3 to 4 a.m. in the morning. So they were there with a tracker. We don't actually know what they came for, but they say that they came with information. So they were there, they arrested my mom, said they found something in her phone, and then they asked my dad to come with. And since that day, we never saw them till today.
We are here to raise our voice to the agony and the condition we are in as a family. For 4 years, our brother have been abducted from his home. He left behind his wife and 2 daughters. His parents were there up till the point that his mother died while he is still in detention.
Amnesty is calling on government to open a register for these victims as part of efforts to return them back to their families.
But when people are kidnapped for their opinion or political position, then it becomes worrying because you won't know where they're kept.
We are calling on the Nigerian government to establish a register, and that register should provide the beginning for justice for these families.
Amadine Uyi, reporting for News Central.
Thank you, Amadine. Joining me now to discuss this is Public Affairs Analyst Lolu Elegbede. Mr. Elegbede, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Amnesty International, I checked. They've been doing this, calling on the government over the years, bringing out, names and details of people who have been missing, who have been forcibly abducted, and all of that. Yet, it seems the government is not responding. Is it that they are not responding, or we're not hearing what they are doing?
I think it's probably a bit of both, I would say, because if they're doing something, no matter how small, there would be some sort of communication, or at least there would be some sort of awareness in terms of the actions. Obviously, if we're talking about sensitive cases like this, you're not always going to know every single thing the government is doing, but at the very least, the families would have an idea that something is being done. So I think it's sad. It's quite unfortunate that this is still happening. I mean, don't get me wrong, disappearances happen pretty much in every country, but we need to get to a place where for us it becomes the exception in terms of what we do to try to get people back when they've been either abducted or falsely disappeared, as they disappeared as they call it. But nothing seems to happen, and I've always said one of the biggest problems we have in Nigeria is lack of consequences. Because if these things happen and nothing happens, the authorities don't do anything, the government doesn't do anything, it's going to keep happening. It's just that simple, unfortunately.
It was sad watching the family members there recounting the last time that they saw their family member, and one wonders about the aspect of closure, accountability for this family. Amnesty is asking for an investigation. They are asking for the opening of a register. Which should they prioritize? Because, like it or not, a lot is going on in this country at the moment, and one would say they can't take on everything at the same time.
Yeah, true. They can't take on everything at the same time, but the first role of any government anywhere in the world is safety of its citizens. That's their number one job as the government. Everything else, the economy, everything else comes secondary to that. So if you can't keep your people safe, and I mean, you can't keep every single human being safe, I get that. But when things happen, the people need to feel like the governments care enough about them to try to do something about it. But where you have cases where these things happen, I mean, like you said, looking at those families, I think I'm not sure which is worse, the fact that their loved ones have disappeared or the fact that they have no idea what's happened, and they probably will. I mean, some of it has gone on for years, and if you ask them, they probably will tell you that yes, there's hope, but again, would they ever hear anything? Nobody knows. And it's not because they don't have faith, they do, which is why they're still trying to create this awareness. But the reality is that with each passing day, each passing month, each passing year, it becomes harder and harder to do anything about it, and then it becomes a distant memory at some point, which is really, which is a terrible, terrible thing, because, like you said, it means there's no closure for the families, and that's a tough place to be.
The country director of AI, Issa Sanusi, in that report, and is quoted generally as saying that they will intensify their campaign against government's deafening silence, that's his words, on the fate of victims of enforced disappearance, particularly in that region. The question I want to ask is, yes, they're doing a good job, but beyond making known these figures and drawing attention, what more do you think they can do to push for more commitment from government away from the rhetoric?
Unfortunately, there isn't that much, to be honest. And I say that because an alternative would be some sort of private investigative network, which obviously in terms of resources is almost a non-starter, because when you think about where a lot of these incidents happen, where first of all, we're talking about some of the poorest parts of the country. So the idea of doing this privately just doesn't work. But that's the only alternative I can think of. The only other thing they can do is what they're doing, which is to keep putting as much pressure on the government as possible. The only thing, if anything, all they need to do is try to increase that pressure. I don't know if social media would work, because social media, if it doesn't have a ring to it, people don't pay attention. So it's sad, but there isn't that much else they can do, unfortunately.
And the notation you made about social media is even worse. Sensationalism is overshadowing real
Absolutely.
issues. Thank you very much, Mr. Elegbede, for speaking with us.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.